the 20mm f1.7 Pancake lens from Panasonic. A really terrific lens that you can get at a pretty reasonable price. Let's take a look at this thing. The 20mm f1.7 Pancake lens from Panasonic is really just a fantastic lens. When this was introduced in 2009, it was one of the sharpest lenses for Micro Four Thirds. Probably still is today. Now, recently Panasonic brought out an update to this lens, and I think the optical formula is still pretty much the same. They improved the coating, as I understand it, and improved the autofocus. But the older version is still a fantastic lens, and you can often get them at a really reasonable price, especially since they brought out the new one. Now, this lens is just one of my favorites, and it pretty much lives on my EP5. This is a combo that I carry around a lot. Nice and compact. The lens is only 1 inch thick and beautifully constructed. Got a nice smooth focus ring. If you want to do manual focus, it'll do that quite nicely. So it's just a fantastic lens for everyday carry, for street photography, for landscape photography. Now the 20mm focal length is a little bit unique. And it's equivalent to a 40mm on a full frame or say a 35mm film camera. And it's not the first time that a 40mm lens has been used. I think probably one of the best ones was the 40mm Summicron for the Leica CL compact rangefinder cameras. Just a really fantastic lens. Now, this focal length, like I say, it's not really a wide angle lens. It's not really quite a normal lens. It kind of falls in between. So what is this lens? So the 20mm or 40mm equivalent is like I said, it's not a normal lens, it's not a wide angle lens, so what is it? And back in the film days, the 40mm focal length was called by some to be a super normal. I think that's because there's a lot of discussion about what our angle of view, our eyes actually is. You know, what is normal? And you know, if I'm reading a book or looking at my phone, then my field of view is very narrow. My mind, you know, crops my sensor to a very narrow field of view. And yet if I'm looking at a landscape, you know, mentally I'm going to see a much wider area. So, you know, our eyes, while they're not actually a zoom lens, we mentally, you know, focus in or out on a, you know, wide range of angle of views. And so, you know, what is normal? Well, to try to come up with something to call a normal lens, long time ago someone came up with the idea that the diagonal of the film or sensor format, the diagonal, so if your sensor on 35mm or full frame is 24 by 36mm, then the diagonal of that is your focal length. And that's not actually 50mm, but it's close. And so the idea of a 50mm lens kind of became, you know, what we call normal. 25mm, of course, on Micro Four Thirds. So the 20 is a little bit wider, but it's a super useful focal length. I find it very good for, you know, group portraits, for landscape photography, for architectural photography. It just has a lot of uses. It's very popular for street photography. It's one of those lenses that is just a very useful focal length, and though it doesn't have a big following like the 35mm or the 50mm lenses do, it's just a great all-around lens. It's a focal length that I'll grab a lot of the time when I'm going out to take pictures, and it's just kind of lives on this EP5 as an everyday carry kind of outfit. So this lens is a little technical stuff. Is like I said, it's an inch deep. It's a very compact lens, but in that space you've got 7 elements in 5 groups, and 2 of the lens elements are aspheric. Now, an aspheric lens element is a lens element that's not just a simple curvature on the surface. It actually has more than one curve. So it's the radius actually changes from the edges to the center. It's a very complex thing. And back in the old film days, you know, hand grinding or the grinding of those kind of lenses was very expensive, and you had to be done one at a time. Now we have the technology to make aspheric elements much more readily, and the cost is greatly reduced. So having a lens with 2 aspheric elements in it, back in the film days, would have made this lens cost just an astronomical amount of money. Today, not that big a deal. You get the image quality that you get from atmospheric elements, and this just makes for a fantastic lens. Now, this lens, the image quality, like I said, is just fantastic. It's back in 2009 when it was introduced. Like I said, it was probably one of the sharpest lenses that was available for Micro Four Thirds, and I think probably still so today. It just delivers outstanding image quality. It's one of the reasons I chose this. I already had the 17mm lens, and so like, well, why would you buy the 20? But when I read about the image quality that this lens delivers and the compact size, and the speed, you know, f1.7 is reasonably fast, so I just wanted to have it. So, and I've really enjoyed having it. It's just been super useful. So let's look at some images that I've taken. Like I said, you're gonna maybe have seen some of these images before, and that's because I use this lens a lot. But let's take a look at some of those, and then we'll talk about that at the end. Well, there you go. Those are all images shot with this 20mm f1.7 Panasonic lens. Really enjoyed having this lens, and I think you'll agree that the image quality that this lens can deliver is just fantastic. I really love using this lens. Not only is the image quality great, but it's compact. It's just a great lens to use. So, if you have any thoughts or questions, I hope you'll leave me a comment. If you would, please click on the like and subscribe buttons. And as always, thanks for watching.